Now, Greenpeace Africa is calling on G20 host and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to lead the charge on a global wealth tax targeting billionaires and to back the UN tax convention aimed at creating fair international tax rules. Joining us now to discuss this call to action is Amos Wemanya, Greenpeace Africa's responsive campaigns lead. A very good afternoon to you, Amos. Thanks very much for your time. Give us a bit of background to this call.
Yeah, thanks so much, Buyo, for having me. As you truly mentioned, Greenpeace Africa activists yesterday dropped a banner that is rallying President Ramaphosa through the South Africa's G20 presidency to have an outcome in this G20 finance ministers meeting that speak to taxing the super rich. You see, most people, including yourselves, do pay taxes on their salaries. We pay taxes on our groceries, on our fuel. And the question that we keep asking ourselves is, why should billionaires be exempt from this system that allows them to not to pay their fair share of taxes? The rules that we have right now, we do not apply fairly. There is this notion that there is scarcity of resources, but there is enough money for a green and just future. But what we are saying that it is in the hands of the super rich who continue to hold it while plundering and polluting our planet. So it is time for them to pay their fair share. And this, there has to be measures in these processes, political processes, that are taken to redistribute power and wealth from the super rich. And this involves reforming the current global financial system. So we have an opportunity to change global tax rules that allows billionaires to pay their fair share.
Well, I mean, the forum of which South Africa is now president is run largely by consensus, which other people decode to mean it's the world, I mean, the word or views of the rich trump those of the poor, and which then doesn't give a great deal of hope to people who may be watching as to whether South Africa will indeed, for example, take up such issues as the one you have raised, and how successful that can we really or realistically expect them to be on this one?
Yeah, the thing is actually the issues of having new global tax rules were taken to the United Nations by the Africa group of negotiators. And South Africa has been more progressive. We have seen quite recently during the Finance for Development forum that was happening in Sevilla, Spain, South Africa joined a coalition of countries that included Brazil and Spain that are calling for taxing the super rich. So in that spirit, and since South Africa the G20 presidency this year, they need to keep that momentum and achieve the same outcomes in the communique that comes out of G20. And this has to support a UN process that is more democratic, that is more inclusive, rather than the current system that supports the global tax rules to be formulated by a few clubs, a club of a few member states, mostly OECD countries. This has to be shifted and taken to the UN. And what we are hoping is that through this UN-backed process, we are able to dismantle financial secrecy and commit to more ambitious and detailed transparent measures that will allow calculation of the true wealth, assets, and international financial transactions, and allow us to charge taxes based on those amounts.
The reason I'm asking, or was asking that question, is because you may know this, that domestically, I mean, there have been calls for a wealth tax, but also an apartheid-era redress tax. guess who's been pushing back? The most vocal people of all is the man you saw earlier, where we had a bite from, which is the finance minister, Enoch Godongwana, who says you can't do that. And of course, I mean, he presents an argument as to why, but chiefly that already South Africa is is taxing the rich very, very heavily. I may not be comparing apples with apples here, but you know, in the context of the issues you are raising, I'm saying here's South Africa being asked by its own citizens to tax the wealthy even more, but you have those in government saying, don't do it.
Yeah, there is always this fear, and this fear is created by those that are benefiting from the current system that allows them to hoard and hide wealth. But what we are saying is actually South Africans know the pain of injustice more than anyone else. And since South Africa was able to overcome the political apartheid and through the leadership of President Ramaphosa that he has already shown in other processes, including joining the coalition for taxing the super rich, they will be able to help the world and help Africa to be able to achieve the new global tax rules that the world is looking for. And actually, the argument that the wealthy are already paying their fair share is not true, because the system that we have right now allows them to hide their wealth and avoid taxation. And we are calling for an international framework on tax that could help curb the race to the bottom and stop shielding polluters from accountability. This must help us to end harmful tax practices that have been happening, including the allocation of tax preferential regimes and help us abolish tax havens and incentives and allow us to tax the super rich according to the true value of their wealth, to be able to contribute to funding solutions, social solutions to the social challenges that we face, solutions to the climate crisis that the world is facing today.
Do you believe you're being heard? Do you believe that President Ramaphosa will seize this historic opportunity and do what you're asking him to do?
I do agree. We have a historic opportunity this year because we'll be having the UN Tax Convention substantial sessions happening next month in New York. And as you may already know, a call for fair taxation is growing louder. The tax justice movement is growing stronger. And President Ramaphosa has already shown leadership, like I mentioned in other processes, including the BRICS that just happened quite recently, also had very progressive outcomes on the issues of taxation. So we are hoping that President Ramaphosa will not drop the ball in this G20 process and join the voices and the forces with the African group and also G77 and have an outcome that strengthens and supports a call for wealth tax.
Amos Wemanya, let me thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.